This sad tweet is not wrestling related per se, but it does involve a former wrestling personality and somebody who actually does have, even to this day, connections to the wrestling business. And I'm talking about Chris Nowinski. Chris Nowinski, for those who don't know, is the co-founder and CEO of the Concussion Legacy Foundation. He was Harvard Chris from WWE. He got a contract after competing on the very first season of Tough Enough. He didn't win, but I think he was the runner-up that season. But they saw potential in him and they signed him, and he had this, again, I think he went to Harvard, and that's where the gimmick came from, and he was a very obnoxious heel, still very green and inexperienced, but who knows where his career might have gone. He had his career cut short due to post-concussion syndrome. And he started this foundation. It used to be under a different name, but, several years later, after dealing with his own issues, he and the expert that he sought out to help him with those issues, who himself is a very famous name. In fact, I think he was the guy they mentioned in the movie Concussion. The two of them ended up forming this nonprofit foundation. So there was a big story in the sports world on Thursday. Probably saw it all over social media, all over ESPN. Miami Dolphins quarterback Tua Tagovailoa was slammed hard to the ground during Thursday night's game against the Cincinnati Bengals, and he smacked his head on the turf. He was down on the ground for 7 minutes probably before they strapped him to a gurney. They carried him off the field. This was after he got knocked to the ground in a game last Sunday and smacked his head on the ground. Then he got up, thought he was getting his bearings back. He was going to continue on to the next play. He immediately fell back down because he couldn't keep his balance. It was very clear that something was wrong. And at first they diagnosed it as a head injury. Then they rescinded that and they claimed, no, it was a back injury, not a head injury. Even though it was very clearly a head injury. He slammed his head on the ground and then he could barely stand up straight. The guy got his brain scrambled. Anybody watching that could see it with their own two eyes. Adam Schefter of ESPN said that per the NFL's own concussion protocol, if there are any signs of gross motor instability after a collision, a player is not allowed back in the game. Not only was he allowed back in the game last Sunday, he was allowed to play again 4 days later, which is asinine. Then yesterday, ESPN broke the news that the unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant involved in clearing Tua during last Sunday's game that allowed him to come back in has been fired. Multiple sources said the firing came after it was found that the consultant made several mistakes in his evaluation. No shit, Sherlock. You don't say. So there's an investigation now that's ongoing. It's being led by the NFL and the NFL Players Association. I'm sure when the NFL investigates the NFL, it will find wrongdoing with the NFL. So I saw some ex-NFL players. They were also talking about the impact of the artificial turf and how it's much harder than grass. And it's a great point that I hadn't really thought about. That's what we have here at the stadium in Brooklyn for the Mets minor league team. The stadium in Brooklyn is right by the water on the Coney Island Boardwalk. It's a beautiful place for a ballpark. But when Hurricane Sandy hit 10 years ago, it flooded the entire stadium. I mean, everything. The grass, all the offices, it was all flooded out. And they installed artificial turf. It used to be grass, and then after the storm, they installed artificial turf. It allows them to do more events there, like concerts, easier to clean up after a big event. They just had the Nitro Circus there, a few weeks ago. Darby Allin was there. So a lot of these stadiums have turf now. And turf is a lot more unforgiving if you get slammed down on it than grass would be. It's like being slammed on concrete. So that doesn't help when it comes to stuff like concussions. Now, before the game on Thursday, Nowinski tweeted, "If Tua takes the field tonight, it is a massive step back for concussion care in the NFL. If he has a second concussion that destroys his season or career, everybody involved will be sued and should lose their jobs, coaches included. We all saw it. Even they must know that this isn't right." So he tweeted that only a few hours before the game on Thursday. Then the injury happened. And he tweeted again. He said, "This is a disaster. Pray for Tua. Fire the medical staffs and coaches. I predicted this and I hate that I'm right. 2 concussions in 5 days can kill someone. This can end careers. How are we so stupid in 2022? And there was nothing sad about those tweets other than what happened to Tua. It's awful, and he never should have been put in that position to begin with. I don't give a shit if he wanted to play or not. Of course, players want to play. Wrestlers want to wrestle. How many years have we heard that about pro wrestlers? They used to tape up their injuries, hide their injuries. Oh, you broke something? Put some tape on it and go back out there. Be a man, right? That's even to this day, there are wrestlers, I'm sure, who do the same thing, right? Don't take me out, coach. I can play. I'm good. It's not their decision to make. There are supposed to be people above them in positions of authority who are more responsible to see these things and say, you're not playing. So they failed him. There's nothing sad about what he tweeted there, except the replies underneath. And I can't even list them all, and I think one of the tweets has since been deleted, but I'll just read you some of these wonderful responses here to what Nowinski was saying. The Dolphins, NFL, and third-party neurologists all cleared him and said that he did not have a concussion, but I guess Chris PhD on Twitter knows better. And there's this one that says, PhD, we're supposed to be impressed? Yeah, oh, this was great. This one was great. Stay in your lane. That's always my favorite one. Stay in your lane. This is literally his lane. This is what he does for a living. He talks about concussions and concussion protocols. Then, of course, you had all the people who were sticking up for the Dolphins, because that's their first reaction, right? Very tribalist. You got to be a team player. Oh, you're knocking my team. Who are you? What do you know? You're just a former wrestler. I can't tell you, all these imbeciles, all these imbecilic responses I saw, that's what wins for sad tweet this week. I will say, though, Nowinski did take things over the top. He had a third tweet, and he did delete it. In the tweet, he said that members of the Dolphins staff should go to jail for letting him play 5 days after an obvious concussion that you covered up. If he dies from second impact syndrome, I am pushing for murder charges. Now, I don't think anybody is pushing for murder charges. The man is still alive, thank God. But I can understand why he would be upset about this. That I wouldn't have tweeted. But I can understand why he would be upset. He had his own career ended due to a bad concussion. He made this his mission. And he sees them putting the team first over this kid's health and well-being. He has every right to be upset. But just this week, Michael J. Sampson, the doctor, Dr. Sampson, used to work for WWE, now he works for AEW. He tweeted a picture of Nowinski some time ago, standing in an AEW ring. I guess he was in an empty arena. He was addressing, I think, the roster. Sampson said, thanks to Chris Nowinski, founder of the Concussion Legacy Foundation, for presenting to AEW talent on the most recent information on concussions. #CTE and ways to prevent or avoid sustaining one. Always cutting edge science. #save your brain. And Nowinski tweeted, in light of the Tua disaster, I appreciate more than ever AEW, Tony Khan, WWE, Triple H, NWA, and Billy Corgan, all inviting me to come teach their talent about concussions and the risks of getting in the ring before you are recovered. Protecting athletes begins with educating them. And again, I don't see there's anything to be upset about there. Everything he's saying is absolutely true. He's speaking from a position of experience, having gone through this himself. And we have learned a lot in recent years about concussions. Have been a major issue in pro wrestling. Bryan Danielson couldn't get cleared. He was forced into retirement because of head issues. It took him going to 3 or 4 different doctors who cleared him to get him back in the ring. Adam Cole has been missing from AEW television now for months at the worst possible time because he got a really bad concussion a few months ago, and they've kept him out. They're going to make sure that they put him back in the ring only when he passes protocol and only when they are sure that he is okay. So at least we are seeing examples of them taking these things more seriously. But there's still a big problem in wrestling, in football. But if you ask the people on Twitter, you've got a PhD after your name, fancy boy. What's that supposed to do? Impress me? Why don't you lick the fucking nacho cheese off your fingers and sit the fuck down?